It is the off season, and we are believing Vikings. We're going to start to decompress. We're basically leaving 2023 in the rear view and going to pull full pivot to the off season. Got most of the gang with. We think Sally's going to join. We shall see. We got some general questions tonight for the group. Ron, I'm going to start with you. You can either be as brief or as detailed as you like. I wanted to ask you this: what is the path forward for the Minnesota Vikings?
I think primarily just get healthy. I think that was a big downfall to the season because whenever they started to get things rolling, something would happen. Whether it was Cam Akers started to look good and he goes down, Jefferson he goes down, Kirk goes down. So just getting healthy, and then obviously a topic will always be figuring out the quarterback position. And I know you're probably on the same boat as me where I'm all for bringing back Kirk. Who knows what the path forward is for the successor or for the draft picks. But I like to think that we're in a pretty good spot in the offseason with all the turmoil they went through this year, and to be able to kind of turn the page on that and kind of get back to, all right, if we do what we're supposed to do, fix the fumbling that they had, they should be in that competitive rebuild, which is what, Kwesi spoke about. So, I have faith in the process as far as what is coming, as far as impending free agents and stuff like that. So, but it's a long road. We have, months before, or a couple months before free agency, then another couple months before the draft. And, we're not the only team that has answers or that has questions. So they'll figure it out. But it'll be fun to kind of see how it transpires.
Bryant, the next several weeks for Vikings football, the big talker will be whether or not Cousins returns or not. He is scheduled to hit free agency in 2 months. And in theory, the Vikings could bring him back for a year or two. We've also got to sign Justin Jefferson and our guy, Christian Darrisaw, who's been on this show before. What do you think the path forward is, Bryant? Do you think that they should re-sign Cousins or start fresh with the rookie? What do you got?
I was going to ask you guys, what do y'all think would be the goal with the first pick in the draft? Like, what do you think they'll go after?
Well, if you want my answer, it is beyond the shadow of a doubt a quarterback. Because, my opinion, I'll give my 2 cents here, is that they brought Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and Kevin O'Connell to Minneapolis to change the culture and change things. And if they're not going to draft a quarterback now, then when the hell are you going to do it? I understand that Cousins is productive and whatnot, but he will turn 36, and there's a history of dudes slowing down at that age, especially at quarterback, coming off the Achilles. And even if they want to bring back Kirk, which it sounds like they want to, that's fine. But I think they should do both. If that is the mindset, still draft a quarterback. Might even have to trade up to get the guy that they want. Is that what you're thinking too, Bryant, or would you rather?
That's definitely what I was thinking. At a certain point, like, you have to start preparing to get like a quarterback in there. You keep bringing back Kurt and giving all these different chances, and I feel like it's almost like a safety net for everybody to say, like, we're kind of comfortable with Kurt and almost scared to try somebody new. But at a certain point, you have to try somebody new or get some type of change to take place, because Kurt can't play that position but so much longer.
Yep, he will be 36 in August, and whether or not that's with the Vikings or the Falcons, that's the other team that's kind of hot in the rumor mill if he does leave. So where I'm at is either way, whatever they want to do. If they want to extend Kirk for a year or two, I fully understand that. If he doesn't fit in the budgetary plans, I would love to start with, let's say it's Jaden Daniels, because then you'll have this precious window where he'll be cheap. Justin Jefferson will be expensive. Jordan Addison will be cheap. Hawkinson's here for 4 more years. And then the goal would be, you win the chip in that time frame. Yannick, I've told you off air that if Cousins departs, I really have no major qualm with it, because I know that a rookie quarterback will be coming. What about you? What's your path forward for the Vikings?
My path is they got to draft a quarterback. Whether they bring back Kirk or let him depart, I don't know. But they got to draft the quarterback to be prepared for the future. And this is the year. They have the 11th overall pick. That's the highest pick they've had in a while. And it's a good draft class to need a quarterback with like 4, 5, 6 guys looking pretty good. So I think this is the year they should target a quarterback. I don't know if they have to trade up for one or just take whoever's available, but I think they really need to get one this year.
At 7-10, this might be the bottom floor where the Vikings are going to get with Kirk as quarterback. I mean, he missed half the season. And if your plan is to keep him, do the competitive rebuild thing, I don't know that you're ever going to get a draft pick this high. Again, that is my ringing endorsement for whatever you have to do to get your quarterback. And I've said this on the show before. I'm going to reiterate it. If you have to trade up, using a first rounder or two or however many you need, it really doesn't matter all that much, because if the guy is good and he is your franchise quarterback, like Justin Herbert or something, nobody will care. And then if it turns out he's like Christian Ponder, by the time that pain is over, your draft picks are going to be returning anyway. So I have no problem with Kwesi deciding on which guy he and Kevin O'Connell want, and then trading the farm, so to speak, for Drake May or whoever it may be. Today, Ron, at the press conference, predictably, a reporter asked Kwesi about Kirk, and he said the standard line that they've all said, the Wilfs and Kevin O'Connell, for the last year: we definitely want Kirk back. But then Kwesi also said, but his job is to protect the franchise, so that it kind of sounds like he's not going to unload, hey, here's $45 million per year. What do you make of his dual answer of, we want him back, but I'm going to protect this franchise?
I mean, I feel like that's been his MO since he took over. It's, whether it's right or wrong, but like talking out of both sides of the mouth, trying to keep all avenues open. It was with the Dalvin Cook situation, with, even now with Kirk, and even last year with Kirk, it's kind of been the same thing. Like, you don't want to burn a bridge, but you also have to be able to set yourself up. I think Kirk fully understands that as well from his side. Like, and I don't think he takes offense to any of it. I think that it's clear that he's wanted to some extent, and he wants to be here to an extent as well. So, it's the general GM speak. It's, they ask the questions, and, they're not going to just flat out give an answer, but, they don't, the ownership, the general manager, they're not sending him out there to blow the gallows horn, shirtless against the division rival, unless they have it in their mind that they would like him back. Again, at what price tag, I don't know. There's a lot that needs to be figured out. But yeah, also to your point, we pick 11. It's a deep quarterback draft. Like, you may not get one of those top two guys in Caleb Williams or Drake May, who's NFL ready now. You may have to take a guy that is going to need a year or two to develop, a la Patrick Mahomes. So we're kind of set up in that situation, like how the Chiefs were, where they have a veteran who is fully capable, no signs of slowing down as of yet. But you can also use that capital and get the guy that you want. And I've been saying that all year long. Like, I'm all for doing that, but I also don't want them to stand pat at 11 and take the fifth best quarterback that's there just because. If that's the case, then take the best defensive player, take, the Dallas Turner, take Kool-Aid McKinnie. Like, again, how cool would that be, just to have a, Kool-Aid on your team, purple Kool-Aid, like, just goes with the team. So, but again, there's going to be a quarterback that goes in the second or third round, whether that's a Spencer Rattler, whether that is, someone's going to fall, whether it's Penix, McCarthy, one of these guys. So unless you get one of those top three, you can always use your draft picks and get one of those guys again. I think they have that plan in place. But we'll see what happens at the combine, pro days, and go from there. But I think it's going to kind of be foot in both camp once the free agency period gets underway.
On Kwesi's words, the way that he speaks, kind of saying two things or speaking diplomatically, I want to point out that that's his job. When a reporter asks him, you need a quarterback in first round, is that your plan? If he came out and said, yes, we're getting a quarterback, well, he's screwed all elements of surprise and his leverage as a trader of assets. So if you ever watch those press conferences and think that he's dancing, that's why he works here, is because he has the ability to verbally dance when asked those questions, especially about the draft or, about what's he going to target in free agency. You got to keep that shit quiet. It's the element of surprise. Bryant, all of the team's leaders have consistently said that they want Cousins back. Now it sounds like you'd be content with them not bringing him back and moving on to a youngster with the affordability of a rookie contract. Would you be cool with them doing both, signing Cousins for a year and $35 million, and then drafting a guy too, so that he sits and watches? Like,
I was going to say, yeah, I would be okay with them doing a year, not committing to two, but a year, and bringing somebody else new on board so they can kind of watch and like learn behind him for the year, especially a first round draft pick. Like, you don't need 2 years to sit behind somebody. You need a year, maybe even half the season, and put them in there and get them, some live actions to see how it's going, because that's like now your new investment. So I would be okay with bringing somebody in and let that new guy learn from a veteran who's been there and knows the ropes, and kind of give him some knowledge before he's heads out.
And I'd be willing to say that's probably the most likely option that's going to happen of all this stuff we're chatting about and all the stuff we're going to continue to chat about on this show. Is in all likelihood they're probably going to find a way to meet in the middle with Cousins for a year or two, and then draft whoever it is. If the plan is to have the guy wait, then you really could draft like JJ McCarthy, because that guy's 20 years old right now, and just won a national championship. And by the time Kirk's ready to ride off in the sunset, boom, he'd be ready. You might even be able to trade back and still get McCarthy, or trade back into the first round like Rick Spielman used to do. Yannick, we've kind of covered the basis on this question. When Kwesi talks about protecting the franchise, or just he kind of sounded like he had more of a sense of urgency this press conference than he usually did. What did you make of that and his notion of wanting Kirk back, but also wanted to be a protectorate of his Vikings?
Yeah, I feel like protecting the franchise means, in this case, not giving Kirk a long-term contract, not signing him to 3 years and let's say 45 million a year, and watch him decline while under contract. He has to protect the franchise for in that case. Meanwhile, Kirk probably wants a long-term contract. He wants guaranteed money. He has shown that over and over again. I guess they have to find common ground somewhere in the middle. Maybe it's 2 years instead of 1 like Kwesi wants, and 3 like Kirk wants. I don't know. But I don't think money is really the problem here. I think it's structure, it's contract duration, it's guaranteed money. I think that's what in the end decides if Kirk comes back or not.
A lot of talk has, since the season ended on Sunday afternoon, and this was going on a couple weeks ago as well. A lot of talk has been like, well, maybe Cousins will come back on a hometown discount, or maybe he'll take a team-friendly deal. I want to point out to listeners and viewers that when you hear team-friendly discount for a quarterback in 2024, that means about $35 million. I think for some reason we still have this mindset like, hey, he'll come back for 10 or 15 mil, and that flat out is not going to happen. So I hope when people hear team-friendly deal in quarterback speak, especially for Cousins, when Daniel Jones, Ron will tell you about it, got that infamous $40 million per year deal, that set the entry level. And so anything Kirk takes less than 40 million, or right at 40 million, that should be considered humanitarian, if you can believe that. All right, so we know that they have to address quarterback. It's the first foremost domino of the offseason, and it kind of has felt that way for the last 3 off seasons. Like, are they going to keep Kirk or not? And then they also have to re-sign Justin Jefferson and Danielle Hunter. I think that's a no-brainer. But after those items, Ron, what is the top offseason priority?
For me, it's bringing back Dalton Reisner.
Yeah.
Like after those guys, I think he was everything that you could ask for in stabilizing that offensive line. Obviously, you're set at the bookends with Darrisaw and O'Neal and Ed Ingram. Like, I was ready to rip on him any single time I get every chance I got, but he played extremely well, I thought, as the season progressed. And then Garrett Bradbury. So again, once Bryant knows, once you get that stability on the offensive line, the continuity is huge. So bringing back Reisner, I think that would be great. He didn't allow a sack all year, and that would keep the offense as intact as possible, because you have the weapons. Keep whatever they do at quarterback, maybe improve the running game, because you can't really get any worse than what you were this year. And then the rest is all defense. Every free agent dollar, every draft pick outside of quarterback should all be defense. And I don't care if you're taking cornerbacks like with the first 5 picks. I don't care, because you throw 5 darts, you're going to hit on a couple of them, hopefully. Like, you can't miss that bad on a bunch of stuff. So I just don't want them to get in the mode of past draft history and letting that dictate what happened now. So the Reisner top priority, and then defense after that.
Bryant, so in the seasons where you didn't participate in the postseason, right after your regular season ends, do you do like introspective as a player to try to figure out what you could do better? Or are you just happy to be done for a while? Walk us through what you might do in January when the season ends.
Start packing up your house. You start worrying about what you could do better. I mean, because you can't really correct it because the season's over. So you start, to me, I feel like when you start working out for the like in April, come back for the off-season workout, that's when you kind of start gearing up and thinking about those areas where you need to get better at. And when you start training and working, then that's when you start working on those areas. Because I mean, right now, you're not back on a football field till middle of April, I guess, or not even a football field, but you're not even back in the facility till like around April 15th, mid-April. So at this point, you just got to pack up and close in your house, or if you don't stay in Minnesota year round, close up your house and go back home and make sure you keep your heat on so your pipes don't burst like mine did one year.
What about so it sounds
but yeah,
like
and just not making the playoffs, it's different when you make the playoffs. Like there's a little more like disappointment, but not making the playoffs, you kind of just like, oh, we didn't make the playoffs. But to actually get in the playoffs and then like you realize you're only a couple games away from the Super Bowl, it's like a little, to me, I feel like it's a little worse. It's like a little worse feeling leaving. Because each game you never know, like, you know what I'm saying? And so it's different. But towards the end of the season, you kind of have an idea like if you're gonna make the playoffs or not. So it's just like, okay, let's see how we can prepare. Like at a certain point, especially if you already know the last game you're not gonna make the playoffs. A lot of guys play this so they don't get injured, so they don't have to stay up there and do rehab. Yeah. So you're not getting the best effort out of a lot of guys because they don't want to get injured the last game and they already know they're not making the playoffs. So that's kind of like the mindset.
So if you have,
do you ever have any injury over the off season that you had to rehab for? Like,
yeah, I had in 2007 my meniscus, and I must have kept playing through the rest. Whatever we played San Diego, I don't know if that was towards the end of the season, like 2007. I tore my meniscus in that game, and somehow I kept playing, and then I had the surgery when the season was over.
Is it like, how bad does that suck? Like to have to go through all the rehab process and everything in the off season. Like that's your time that you're supposed to be able to enjoy.
That's your time
all the
that you're
hard work.
recovering. So I mean, at the end of the day, you want to focus on that because you want your mobility and everything, you know, kind of be back intact. But I mean, this slows you down for a little bit. But for a meniscus, it's like a 6 to 8 week, you know, window of, you know, you having to recover and stuff. I hate rehab. I hate a rehab though. It's like I don't feel like you ever come back to like how you originally were anyway. The scar tissue and stuff, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I try to do my best.
In these 3 months, I mean, do you go out and travel the world? Do you hang out and party? Do you still lift weights and stuff? What do you do between mid-January and April or May?
January, you're probably just getting settled back home, a little bit of workouts. You're going to probably definitely start working out in March because it gets closer to you having to go back in April. So you may take a trip here and there. A lot of people flock to Miami or Houston because it's warm those time of years, especially if they're coming from cold places, and hang out. And a lot of guys are working out. I see now a lot of guys are working out together more now than they were in the past. A lot of guys come to and work with certain trainers together. But yeah, so to me, it seems like a lot more guys are actually working out a lot more all year round.
Okay. Yannick, we know the Vikings have to address Cousins, have to re-sign Jefferson, and hopefully Danielle Hunter. Other than those biggies, what is the top offseason priority in your eyes?
I think they really need to address the interior defensive line. They need someone who can rush the passer. It's Harrison Phillips who's a run stopper. It's Tonga, it's Bullard, Lowry, all these guys, they can stop the run, but they can't get after the passer. In multiple statistics, Vikings are dead last in pass rush metrics. It's really bad from the interior, and I think they gotta address it at some point.
Ron, we all kind of talked about the defense there, at least momentarily. In the first 3 games of the season, the Vikings defense ranked near the bottom of the NFL. And then almost like with the snap of 2 fingers, they became elite for 10 games. And then the fourth quarter of the Bengals game hit, and they decided, we're going back to how we were. And so it was like this weird curve. Which version of the defense is more indicative of what it can be under Brian Flores? Do you expect it like, hey, once we get rolling here in September, we assume they'll sign a couple free agents, maybe draft some dudes. Are you excited about the trajectory, or are you nervous that they collapse down the stretch?
No, I am definitely excited because I think, yes, the first few games there was a learning curve of learning Brian Flores' defense. But then I think the latter quarter of the year, like injuries just started to pile up. I mean, even when they got Hicks back, like cornerbacks started to drop. It's across the board. It's hard to ask, Mekhi Blackman and these other young guys to go out and make impactful plays. In learning that type of defense. So I trust that going forward that they're going to add the pieces. I fully agree with Yannick that the front needs to be upgraded. I mean, we legitimately have one viable starter on that front, and that's Phillips. The rest are I'm actually surprised that our run defense held up the way that it did for most of the year because you don't have those. It's not like the Ravens or Steelers where you always have these big nasties up front that are just going to let the linebackers do work. I can't wait to see what Ivan Pace does with an adequate D line in front of him. Like he's so fast and he's so physical that give him those guys up front to let him not saying he's Ray Lewis, but I remember Ray Lewis had once said, like when it was Sam Adams and Tony Siragusa in front of him, when they went to a 4-3 for 1 year, then back to the 3-4 or whatever, he was ecstatic about having those guys in front of him. So allow the guys to make plays behind them, and I think the secondary will improve because Cam Bynum and Josh Metellus were fantastic this year, and like the other guys, there's room for improvement, whether it's Caleb Evans or even Andrew Booth had some bright spots, but, they're going to bring in guys. And whether that's bringing back Murphy, but once they lost him too, like it was pretty significant on the back end.
Mm-hmm. And notably, last offseason, so kind of the remnants of Rick Spielman's budget, the Vikings started it on this day with negative 24 million in the red. If you pulled up Over the Cap 1 year ago today, overthecap.com, you'd see that bright red letters. And now they're at 37 million in the green. And if you know anything about the way the Vikings do contracts, if need be, that could probably inflate to like 60 or 70 million. So they have money to spend this offseason. It doesn't feel like we've had that in about 10 years. Bryant, we were talking about Brian Flores, the defensive coordinator, probably will be back. I don't know that he will interview for any head coaching jobs this cycle. And I've asked you this before, but let me ask you again so you can reiterate to our listeners. How much does the continuity of a scheme, whether on your case on offense or on defense, is a year two of a guy? Is that a big damn deal?
Oh yeah, year two, you're definitely more comfortable with the scheme and play calling. So the changes, like why, especially if they execute it pretty well, I would think that I would keep them and let them continue to grow in that scheme and get used to that that coordinator. So if they don't feel like there's a reason to change it, why do it?
I don't think, well, they'd certainly keep him. It's just a matter of whether or not he would interview for the Patriots job if that comes open, where Bill Belichick's like the last decision to be made. And Brian Flores spent 15 years in New England. And I think a lot of us have thought, well, if that job comes open, he'll probably go interview for it. But then Mike Vrabel's available now. And he has more head coaching experience than Flores. So he could also get that job. Yannick, which version of the Vikings defense was closer to the truth, or at least what we can expect next year, assuming they're going to add personnel? Should we be optimistic that during the middle of the season, it was pretty damn good?
I think it's right in the middle. Personnel is better than some people think, but it's still not good by any means. I don't think they are as good as they were in that middle stretch. They were just awesome, and 10 points, 14 points on average. But also, I don't think they are as bad as they were in the last 4 games where they were really awful. So I guess it's somewhere in the middle. It depends on who they can bring in the offseason, on on the defense. If Daniel Hunter comes back, if they can find another defensive tackle, maybe upgrade the cornerback room. I don't know. I think it's somewhere in between. You should expect them to be an average defense again.
And we hope that it's better, and that would need some free agent assets and growth from some of the youngsters, maybe even Lewis Cine or Andrew Booth. Who knows? All right, the last question I got for you guys is one that's close to home. Ron, do you think Jared Allen will get into the Hall of Fame? He's a finalist.
I think he will. This year, I haven't seen the list of who the finalists are. It's hard because I think he should be in, like, especially if DeMarcus Ware is in. There's no reason Jared Allen shouldn't be, because he was right there as far as numbers and impact, as far as all that goes. But, again, we went through the list of 15 names, a couple weeks ago, and there's a lot of names on there that I know some of those older guys may get sympathy votes in, let's say. But he's definitely deserving. I know when we had him on a few years back, it was on the weekend before his, where he found out on his first time ballot, and he seemed very well self-aware on kind of the process, and there's nothing more he can do about it. And I'm hoping he gets in, because that'll be a nice boom for the Vikings fandom over the offseason.
Jared Allen on the all-time list of sacks, so the one that actually is tabulated from the beginning of time, not just the since 1980 bullshit one. Jared Allen ranks 16th all-time. And so I don't know what more he would need to do to convince the committee. I mean, there are dudes like Ricky Jackson, Carl Eller even had less sacks than Jared Allen. It's not like this fringe territory about, 16th best all time. Like, every guy in front of him on the sack list that is eligible is in. And I don't know why it's been such this mystery over the past few years. So Bryant, your homie Jared Allen, is this the year for him?
It should be. I feel like he or the organization has allowed those other people who may have been waiting a little longer than him to go in. Now I feel like he's waited his turn, and it should be time for him to finally get his name called.
Yeah, and
the other part of it too, that the year where he had 22 sacks, not crapping on the year that you guys had, but you guys were a bad team that year, Bryant. And he went out
Bryant
and
was on that team.
Or no, that's right. That was the year after.
Yeah, Bryant was already gone. That's probably why they were so shitty.
So yeah, maybe where you had no offensive tackle. But I mean, you look at Strahan's sack record, where he's gifted a sack from Favre, whereas Jared Allen's going out there in a 3-4 win season or whatever it was, and getting numbers like that. Like, that to me was more impressive than, it's one thing to be a great dominant player when you're ahead in games. Like, I know Dwight Freeney obviously was always on those Peyton Manning led teams where they would always say him and Robert Mathis pin their ears back and they just go after the quarterback. So to be able to get 22 sacks in 16 games and while trailing in most of those games is to me is an impressive feat.
Brandon, we haven't talked to Jared in about 3 years. I wonder if he'd join again sometime.
It's been that long?
Yeah, it really has. I think it was. You were on the show by then, Ron, right?
Yeah.
I think it was you, it was Breezy and Sally.
Whatever year he is in eligibility of the Hall of Fame. That was his first year that we had him on, because it was right that weekend or that week right before he found out.
Yeah, I think it's 3.5 years. You should see if he ever wants to come back on, Brian. That'd be cool to talk to him. Now, he's pretty vocal as of late on other shows about Kirk not coming back. He's ready to move on from Kirk, so we could pick his brain about that. Yeah, so hit him up. See if he wants to join us. Yannick, I'll ask you. I kid you not. On the all-time sack leaderboard, Jared Allen ranks 16th, and the only guys who are not in the Hall ahead of him on that list are Julius Peppers and Terrell Suggs, and they weren't eligible until this year on Peppers. So it's not some big, oh boy, should he make it or shouldn't he? He's right there with the whole gang of sack leaders. Do you, Yannick, think he'll get in this time?
I think he will be this year. You said it, the sack list. I pulled up his resume. He's 4-time first-team All-Pro, 5-time Pro Bowler, 2-time sack leader. I mean, what more could he do? It's all there is. I mean, he has done it all. he should go in this year.
Yeah, I guess I'm just a little bit more cynical because it's been such a no-brainer to me based on the numbers and then, knowing him from the show a little bit. It should be a no-brainer. This isn't like, you're looking at it thinking he's on the bubble. It's so strange to me. So I'm cynical and thinking, God, they're not going to let him in this year either. But that's just me. All right, group, that flew by that time. Sally did not make it tonight, but we'll presumably talk to her in 2 weeks, which will, let's see, be getting on the doorstep of the conference championships, if I'm not mistaken. Bryant, you wanna see if Jared Allen will join us sometime this calendar year?
Yeah, I'll reach out.
Cool.
I'll reach out, see if he's available.
All right, guys. Well, we'll be back in 2 weeks to chat more about the Vikings offseason and start previewing some of the looks like NFC title game and whatnot.
You said 2 weeks?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right, you guys take it easy.
All right, you too.
Later.